So welcome to this new movement study video where we'll talk about stretching and maybe give you a couple ideas of where to start. So first things first, what is stretching? It's practice to gain flexibility through staying for short or long periods in your maximum range of movement, and even pushing that limit, stretching it out, as we say. And so how do you do that? Uh, most of the stretches will use either gravity or your own strength to get into some positions that stretch out the muscles. Uh, we'll go into that a little further on in the video, but first let's talk about a couple benefits of stretching. So number one is less muscle tension. So your muscles will be a lot more relaxed, which will lead into more mental relaxation. Another good benefit of stretching is decreased risk of injury. So especially if you're training a lot, you'll need that muscle flexibility. Like, I don't know if you've played like with wood or things that are very stiff. What happens when you try to put some load on them, it'll break. But if you look at bamboo, for example, or rattan, which is another type of wood that is even more flexible, when you put strength on it or tension on it, it'll bend and come back. So you want your muscles to be a bit like that, so that they don't break. Like if you put some extreme tension on them, they will simply just stretch. Like an example, let's say you fall on your neck. Well, if your neck is flexible, there's a lot less risk for injury. But this can happen for your ankles, your knees, your legs, any part of the body, even your wrists. So it's good to have flexibility for that. It's also important as a mover. A lot of moves require some level of flexibility, and even some moves that you might want to learn require high levels of flexibility. So that's my top 3 reasons for stretching. Now, before we get into a couple stretches, one last thing: when is it best to stretch? I found that it's good to stretch anytime, but I think the best times to stretch is either, like, depending on your exercise, it can be better before or after. Like if you're doing strength training, it's best to stretch after, because stretching before an exercise will slightly decrease your strength. But if you're doing things like kicks, martial arts training, things that require a high level of mobility, then you might want to stretch before doing the exercises. Then it's also good to stretch in the morning and at night. And my favorite time is to stretch at night before going to bed. Take 15 minutes, sometimes more, depending on how much time I have and how much I feel like stretching. But I just try and get into a routine where at least 5 times a week before going to bed, I do a bit of stretching. So, where to start in stretching, what a stretching routine looks like. First, you want to start by warming up your joints. So you want to work on your mobility. So here's one thing I forgot. There's a term you might hear me say a lot is mobility, and what that means is like your functional range of movement. Like, which range of movement you can move in or move with. And there's also like the difference between that and flexibility. Flexibility, you can't really force yourself into that position. Or should I say, you have to force yourself into that position. You can't really just open up your legs and that's your most flexible range of motion. So flexibility is how much, like how open can you get it to be. So like, let's say this is my mobility, but if I do this, it's more flexibility, so I forced the legs open. Now, yeah, so first routine would be to go through all your mobility, move, like let's do the shoulders for example, so you want to move your full range of motion. Do this a couple of times. This will warm up the muscles and the articulation. You want to do the same thing with your legs. So one thing I like to do is simply going in circles like this. And once you've done that, you want to work on your active flexibility. So here's another thing. Active flexibility versus regular flexibility. Active flexibility is your flexibility in movement. So like the difference in between that and mobility, I'll show. So let's say this is mobility and this is active flexibility. So active flexibility, you're not, just give me a second. You're not staying into that position for a long time, or it's also called active stretching. So you're doing it quickly, things like kick or swinging your arms like this. It's good for warming up. It's also good for doing some specific tricks, things like that. So what I like to do is like spend 3 minutes warming up, maybe 5 minutes of active stretching, and then 15 minutes, just a little ratio to give you an idea, right? But yeah, I like to warm up by doing 3 minutes of mobility, 5 minutes of active stretching, and then move on to 15 to 30 minutes of passive stretching. Sometimes even more, depending. There's this thing called yin yoga, where you stay in these stretched positions for 5 to 10 minutes. But yeah, so let's just get into a stretch. I'll show you an example. So this is one of my favorite stretches. It stretches the legs and the back. So they're different muscles, and you'll feel them when you do it. So you open up the legs, grab one foot if you can. If you can't, grab your shins, and with the other arm, you go over your head, twisting out your chest that way, and try to touch your other hand. That's one stretch you can do. I'll post another video with an actual stretching routine later on this week. This is just to give you like the basics of stretching. So that would be a passive stretch. So you'd stay there for about 30 seconds. You can stay longer if you like, shorter if you're in a hurry. Like my post-workout stretches, I like to do them short. You don't really need to warm up before doing post-workout stretches. And also pre-workout stretches can be quick as well. But I recommend you take, if you have the time for it, a good 30 minutes of your day to stretch, like separatively from your training. Yeah. Pretty sure that's all I had to say about stretching. I try to keep these videos around 10 minutes, so look at it there. I'll be posting another stretching session, or like a set of stretching exercises, so that you know what to do, like a little routine. I'll be posting that this week. Not quite sure when. I have to figure out the schedule. Probably Wednesday, maybe even tomorrow. So I hope you enjoyed, and happy stretching. Hope I could teach you something, and we'll see you. Yeah, let's do this Wednesday. Full stretching routine. Peace.